So the topic is really building businesses in today's world in Asia. And one of the key things about Asia is, as we see, it's a mobile first, not just economy, but it's the behavior. And building businesses, there's a lot of people in the ecosystem of building businesses. So what we've done is we've constructed a really unique group of people that appear across the geography of Asia, and they work in advanced economies, they work in emerging market. They also work on the whole elements around the different ecosystems. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome everyone up onto stage. As Rob said, we have Jacqueline from Profit, we have Michele, we have Jason from Silk Legal, and we have Alokik from Goldman Sachs. So to introduce yourselves, can you just say, what do you do in your daily activities in your business that helps businesses grow in Asia? Yeah. Start with Alokik.
My name is Alokik Advani. I work with Goldman Sachs. We invest in fintech companies. So in my daily job, I'm working with entrepreneurs, startups, to try and, one, understand their value proposition, but in terms of helping them grow, once we make an investment, we're working with them on product development, we're working with them on enhancing the management of the team, strategy, financial growth plans, structures, I mean, a range of different things, everything that you'd get from your classic sort of venture capital or strategic VC.
Yep. Michele?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Jason Corbett. I'm with Silk Legal in Bangkok. We're a commercial boutique law firm, but we do a lot of inbound investment into Thailand, and we also specialize in basically fintech. So we're working with a lot of startups and also other companies that are regionally, and help them grow their businesses within Thailand.
Great. Michele?
I'm Michele Kennex. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Portfolio Quest and innovation advisor for my first company that I founded called Bankers Lab. I'm a recovering banker, now an entrepreneur. So on a daily basis, I work out of the FinTech Accelerator in Singapore on Robinson Road, 80RR. So in my capacity there as an entrepreneur, I try to balance growing my own business, but also being a part of the growing ecosystem. So supporting the efforts of the Singapore FinTech Association, sort of trying to help everybody make all those connections and just keep helping the whole ecosystem mature in whatever small way I can.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline. I'm a partner with Profit, which is a global growth and strategy company. So I'm a strategist by training, right? So in the last 20 odd years, so what I do in my day-to-day, it's I have since moved from the analog world to the digital world today. So in the early days, helped companies like Bandai created Tamagotchi, for those who are young enough to understand or old enough to understand what that is, through to creating, I developed the name and brand Octopus, right, for the government here. So, and then recently helped create Bixby for Samsung. So everything from the name Bixby to the personality, the tone, we created all of the voice and all of that in Hollywood, in San Francisco. And that's what we do. That's in the fintech world, but obviously in the day-to-day, we cut across a lot of the traditional companies as well, right? So helping companies to grow better, sometimes spin-off like Abbott creating a huge Abbey IPO in the stock exchange in New York. But obviously we also work with smaller companies to try to help them grow faster, in particular in China.
Yeah, and you mentioned about Octopus. That's a great idea. And why don't we look at business in terms of growth from the idea all the way through to the execution. So starting off with the idea, like Octopus, was it about tentacles and getting their tentacles into absolutely everything?
Actually, well, when we started developing and working with the MTR and the consortium group with the government here, the whole idea was obviously a contactless card that allows you to travel pain-free 20 odd years ago, before China was merged with Hong Kong on the MTR, and we knew about the retail kind of evolution. So I did the naming in Cantonese. So because it's really for the crowd here, it's not for everybody else. So actually we started with a name called Thng, which came from a Chinese proverb, Si Tong Pa Ta, which means seamless connection in all ways. So we started the name in Cantonese, Thng, make sure that it can be pronounced and remembered by the Chinese, Thng, and then I wanted a name that's not a metro, not an MTR, and all this boring name, something that's a little bit
Edgy.
branded, right? So octopus, right? So the hub of everything connecting the 8, it's really octopus, right? So it should have been the Alipay of today, so they didn't.
And I like the 8 was like continuous and it was like infinity. Yeah.
And of course, they told us that the name got to be auspicious. So the 8 and the infinity came about as part of the symbol. But that's just the visual, but obviously it's backed by a whole strategy of how the brand can bring meaningful change to Hong Kong residents.
Yeah. IP, and once you have a great idea, how do you protect it? Okay, either Michelle or Jason.
You know, Jason, I would really like to know the answer to that question. We're an IP play. I'm waiting with bated breath. Patents, trade secrets, or none?
I think it
Sorry,
really
I
kind
took
of,
the job as the moderator. Go on.
I think it really kind of depends on the context. If you're doing with trade secrets, you know, that is a secret. Keep it internal. You don't want to basically file that with the patent office, otherwise everybody else will know what you're doing. Scaling basically kind of regionally is always an issue too. So in Southeast Asia, we have a lot of different countries. We also have China to the north of us here. And, you know, there's patent protection, IP protection must be done properly in these things. And then when you're trying to scale a business, you need time and lead time to do this in advance. So I have a lot of clients come into me and say, well, we want to do this right now. We're going live in a month. It's like, well, do you know how long it takes to file a trademark in China? So there's a process behind it. And you have to basically kind of govern that process in a proper way and have a lot of lead time when you're trying to scale a business, which planning's essential for it.
That's right. We took the time to sit and write patents. I'm not sure it was advisable because trade secrets may have just worked better. We're still not sure what the right approach was. And for us, the jury's still out. I'm sure it depends on the situation and what you're doing, but I think I haven't found anybody who's really got that one cracked yet.
But I think the truth is, right, I mean, we work with a lot of companies that create new brands, new IP every day. And the truth is sometimes they don't think about this, right? So they develop a product idea or they have some great IPs. By the time they come to us, their market to launch kind of roadmap is very short. And by then you realize that the names they come up with are not, you cannot be trademarked, and to try to trademark across Asia is even more complex, right? We're talking about phonetics, we're talking about name that makes sense, and most of the time it's taken by everybody else. And in different countries, different IP laws. And in China, it is like 20 different countries within China. So it is very complex, right? Not just from a product idea, but from the IP in terms of the brand, value proposition, the name, right? So now we've got to talk about name in Chinese, English, and all of that. So it is really a complex process that I think a lot of companies don't think enough in the early days. So by the time they get to where they are, they couldn't register the name, and the final name, they just slap it together. Does not represent the vision.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, may I just interject here? Oftentimes, your general tendency says, go trademark it, go patent it, go save it, protect it, do everything you want with it.
Grab the URL.
And I think to the point that Jason made, which is, you have to go and give some information out into the world for you to do that. Would you be better off sometimes just, doing what you're doing, get to market quick, get a lead in the space, and then figure out where you're going from there, rather than figure out all the costs? Because the cost, time, and effort involved with doing a patent profile and making sure that it's defensible, and is it a product patent or a process patent? What can you really do with it? How can people copy it? I'm not an IP lawyer, and I think Jason will have a much better view on this. But you may not want to take the time and effort in every instance if you've got a cool idea to go running to the patent office first. I'd rather go test the idea first.
Yeah.
What it really comes down to is just being a commercial decision. If you have a product, you're ready to go take it to market, and you take a bit of a risk on it sometimes, and you can scale and basically get that product to market. You might not have the patent protection, but the product might only have a 8 or 12 month life cycle if it's something that's new. So it comes down to kind of a commercial decision to management of how they want to proceed with it.
Early stage investing. Does Goldman Sachs get involved in that? And do you wait to get like a defensible kind of patent before you actually invest in these companies?
So yes, we do. That's my business. That's what we do. When I say early stage, we're not seed and angel. We do it at Series A beyond. We use our own money to make the investments. We do look for businesses that have something unique. Oftentimes, either the idea, the product set, or the entrepreneurs behind them are really dynamic and unique.
Yeah.
we don't always enforce that you have to have a patent.
Yeah.
We try and understand the nuances of the business. Sometimes there's someone who has a better execution ability than somebody else who might have the patent. So having the patent is great, but you can't actually execute the idea. So I think it depends on the particular product and the particular market or the mix that you're going with.
And with the ICO kind of growth last year, do you think what do you think about ICOs in terms of, is it just another avenue, or does it have to be baked into the building an ecosystem so there's a real necessity for a token?
I have a pretty strong view on this, because I think with the 1,500 or more tokens out there and more coming every day, how many are real? How many actually have some kind of a business tied where it's required tokenization? And others are just an easy avenue to get capital, right? So unfortunately, we're going to see a bunch of things blow up, and only when they blow up are the regs going to come in and try and solve some of this. You can see the regulators in different parts focused on it. But I think that the reality is, it's an avenue to raise money. Is it the best avenues to raise money? Yeah, you can raise some easy money, and people have raised obscene amounts of money through these channels. I think the last numbers were, $4 or $5 billion over the last 12 months. But in terms of being able to really show that as the capital is one thing, right? When you're trying to raise money, you're doing that for certain specific reasons. You want the cash, but you also want the intel, the know-how, the networks, the strategic thinking, the connectivity that comes with the people who you raise money from, right?
Yep.
We always say you can raise money from a lot of people, but you want to get everything else as well.
Yep.
So the ICO that you get the cash, does it give you everything else? No.
Yep.
So, we had this conversation yesterday on the panel I was on as well. The VC business is not going away. It's been around for decades.
Yep.
It's been through several different iterations of people coming and trying to disrupt it. I think the fact that there are people who will spend time with you, understand your business, try and help it in different ways with networks and connectivity and product development, ideas, strategy, et cetera,
Yep.
because they're vested in it, makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
If you've got 5,000 people coming to you within an ICO and giving you, $500 each or $5,000 each, there's a lot of money, but you don't get everything else.
So what's a great example of a business built for the Asia's 21st century? Like, what are these businesses and what makes them different from, say, other markets? Or is it because China leading the way in terms of this connected lifestyle, and because of the WeChat platform and the Alibaba platforms, businesses can actually grow on top of these platforms? Is that the difference, and they can get infinite scale?
For me, I think it comes down to the data. The reason why all these businesses work is because of the data.
Yep.
They have the data. There's no data privacy rules. You can do what you want with it, and you can extract all the information out of it, right? So, and it's China for sure, where all of this has been done. Now, if you look at the platforms of each of these ecosystems, whether it's the BATS, crowd, or it's Ping An, or it's others, they all are using the data in very, very novel ways. Their traditional business could have been this, but they're using it across these massive horizontal expansions into businesses where you never thought these kind of companies could exist. So to me, it's the data. And the fact that, one, the regulators have been a little bit more lax about letting these types of people enter financial services ecosystems from their traditional cases. Alibaba, it's e-commerce, Ping An, it's insurance, the others, it's in different ways. But them getting into the financial services ecosystem because they're allowed to, versus in the US, where Facebook, Amazon, and others have a much higher hurdle to get over before they can be in those businesses, right? So the data and the regulation kind of lets them get involved, and then you've got these types of entities that have significant dominance in a market and have gotten to critical mass where it's difficult to see them dethroned.
And are you seeing those move across borders, not just staying in China?
Absolutely, right? And you're seeing it through the investments you've seen across the board.
I mean, for me, right, I work a lot in the global space, but primarily in Asia, right? So I see, this is my personal view. I think a lot of my colleagues will disagree with me, and maybe the panel as well. I see it over-reliant and looking at the China ecosystem, right? That's a artificial system that has been protected by regulation. I think the platform of WeChat is horrendous, right? This is me, my personal opinion. I'll never use it unless I have to, right? And it's successful because of the ecosystem that's been protected under the Great Wall of China. And there's a bigger market out in Asia. I mean, we do a lot of, the rest of, if you look at the ASEAN region alone, that's about 640 million people. It's the, I think, third or fourth largest trading bloc. It's bigger than EU, right? So people are not looking at and emerging. I mean, China is extremely competitive, and to do that market is a lot stronger. People are all trying to break in, but I see there's a huge opportunity in ASEAN that people are not looking at, 10 to 11 millions, and it's a very free trading bloc, very, the operating system is closer to America, if you may, the social media space in particular. The financial, the old media space, it's a lot more easy for you to crack and break in. And my personal take is that don't try to crack China if you can, but think about other markets. India is another big market, right? So the over focus on China, it's not healthy, in my opinion.
Thank you. I got my therapy for the day. I thought I was the only person who doesn't use WeChat unless she has to.
No,
I'm saying that in Hong Kong. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry, it's, I don't know how, like I tend to agree that you can't focus just on China, and it's a protected ecosystem and has been, but they've been systematically figuring out how to open the gates, right? And they started with various versions of any of the acronyms, QD, QFI, and other things, and then over time you've got these connect pipes going from China to Hong Kong for allowing people to trade and buy different products and things. But it's an ecosystem you cannot ignore because it's one country with controls in place, but regulation that will open up and allow for it. Playing for ASEAN makes sense, but you're still playing for 6 countries. So you're going to have to deal with each of them individually with the regulation. And even with the best intent in the world, even from a trading link that was trying to be created a while ago, it didn't work, right? So having an ASEAN link that we hoped would do something, it was very difficult to pull off. And that was just to like trade equities, forget anything else.
Agree and disagree, right? So I agree about what you say about China. And I mean, the great thing they did, obviously, is that they are able to truly integrate some system like the likes of Alipay and WeChat was extremely well designed, right? It's way better than some of the other systems that we see in the West. But I'm a kind of a unicorn kind of a person who look at something that, don't go where the crowd is too crowded. And it's a hard market to crack, right? China is a very, very hard market to crack. For me, having been from Singapore, you could tell from the accent, right? I don't use the la and all that too much, but I still do that. So, but I think go where the competition is less, right? And the truth is, you can create something more winning. That's my opinion, right? Yeah.
But what I love about China is actually physically going there and immersing yourself and seeing the behavior. And these systems, they're not just digital systems, they're data systems, but it's the way that they're linking with the physical world. And I think this blurring of industries, which unlocks value as money like from Zhong'an to Ping An to Alibaba and Tencent all being involved, they're able to actually wrap the customer's data around, well, what can we do for that? How do we inject new products and stuff that just sits on that? But the data needs to be owned by the customer. So talking about customer-centric kind of businesses and stuff, what advice would you give business owners in terms of the rapid changing world that we live in? How do you keep abreast of the lives of them, and how do you have empathy with those customers to actually come up with relevant solutions for them?
I have a really dumb one we use. We watch kids.
Yeah?
Yeah, so we're sort of do simulation, we're in ed tech. The crazy part is the K through 12 space is actually far more sophisticated than corporate learning.
Yep.
Right? So I'm like, I don't have kids, so I'm like, you have kids? What games are they playing? Are they playing stuff for school?
Yep.
And also, in terms of building our products for the future, for example, we have 2 interns. One's a bit older than the other one. We're actually keeping our eye on the younger one, how he learns, what his patterns are, how he uses software. Yeah. Because we're noticed, even with that 4-year difference, there's actually some subtle differences in terms of how they interact with technology. Yeah. So we're like, okay, we're gonna put our money on watching the younger one, if there's a subtle difference in those behaviors. Because by the time the products you're talking about integrating across all these different industries are mature, the kid who's 4 years younger, who's still an undergrad now, is your market. Yeah. And the way he's developing his taste for technology are what we need to cater for.
Wow.
Right? So anybody with high school kids?
I do.
Maybe I'll watch them for you so I can see what they're doing.
I've got a 1-year-old, not one, is 9 months, and then I have one that's 14, right? So I think, as I said, I came from the world of the DOS and the fax machine and through to today, and how do I keep up in the analog and digital world, right?
Yep.
So I moved from MTV in the video VHS, Betamax, through to now Apple Music and Spotify. I'm in a consulting business and strategy, so you need to have a passion to keep learning. But the evolution of technology is hard, right? So exactly to her point, I mean, I didn't understand Snapchat at all. Everybody, oh, you got to do it. So the only way I had to learn how to use it was really chatting with my son, right? And then he taught me about Snapchat Streak. I've never known there was such a thing called Snapchat Streak. And when he was in his camp, I need to keep up the streak for him so he doesn't break it. I have no idea why. So the only way, exactly, is to do it and learn, right? But the truth is, it depends on individual. Learning is hard, it's lifelong. But I think hire the best people you can, right? So I think a great company, I came from Ogilvy before, and it says this, right? You never try to be the best person, the smartest person in the room. Hire somebody who's going to be smarter than you, and that's what you need to do. So the kids, I don't think only kids are smart. I think we're all around the same age. I like to think we're more digital than the kids because we go through the phase of record, vinyl, and we adopted a digital along the way. So I think we're smarter than the kids, actually, right? We kept up with the big Motorola through to the handheld. But I think hire the best people that you can hire. Diversity is key, right? So if you learn about the management team of a team, you've got to have people who are, I'm a terrible, like, I troubleshoot all the time, right? So I will disagree. Get a team that is consisting of people who can deliver the work, have a team of people who can actually have ideas, and some people who is always in the group that challenges the ideas. So you've got to have that mixed and not a yes man team, and then you can get truly innovative thinking.
So where do you find these people? Like, what are some of the tools that businesses get the best?
That's the hard part, right? So I think you always hear people say this, go find and invest in serial entrepreneurs. Well, how do you find serial entrepreneurs and emerging market ecosystems where they're the first time, we're hoping for the first time ones to come around, right? So you have to decide and back people that you believe in and who have the right passion, drive, vision to get behind something.
Yep.
And someone who comes in with half an idea and is sort of wishy-washy and is willing to sway and flip-flop is not exactly the person who has a vision, because they need to then inspire a team of others who they're going to bring on who have specialist skill sets in technology or marketing or branding or finance or whatever. So the finding that team building is the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's really, really time consuming. And for any business, it's a real difficulty.
Start with a purpose, right? So any company, whether you're a startup or through to, you've got to start with a core purpose, and the purpose got to be consistent, and make sure that the purpose is understood internally, and then externally people would understand. I mean, we're growing in the age of sharing experience, and the millennials like to work in a very different kind of a world and workspace. Yep. You've got to be able to let them understand what is your core purpose and your vision, and then they will come to you, right? So I think the best companies are the one that has a purpose that's so clear that people understand what it is, and you attract the right people who knew what you stand for, and they join you and they kind of fight the battle together, right? So you're either Trump or you're Hillary. So very clear, all right? So you join them and you fight the battle together. So I think start with a purpose, very clear purpose that people know what it stands for, and build the business from there.
And what about the large organizations now, like Google having that 20% rule that you can work on your own projects and stuff? How do you ignite the entrepreneur in everyone to actually, within that kind of structure, reach out and create like open innovation programs and stuff? Are you seeing some really interesting stuff?
My whole company is an open innovation program, so like in a startup, it's not really an issue because every day you're pushing people and saying, I don't know, just try it. If it doesn't work, it's cool. And then they try something else and they just get into that habit. But when I think back on my experience working in larger companies and corporates and in a bank, it was, it's just really difficult. So I admire people who can pull off that entrepreneurship type of thing. I don't know what I would tell my friends who are trying to pull that off, because I think it's You know, you still have the unit KPIs and deliverables, and there's usually a cultural thing around success and failure in those KPIs, et cetera. So I think it's quite difficult, right?
I mean, I think it's a combination, right? So it's very difficult to do because in one, your instincts go in two different ways. In one way, it's saying, let's go create a small specialized SWAT team to go and do this thing off to the side.
Yep.
And the rest of it is saying, the other side is saying, do it within your core businesses or development areas or innovation. You know, should be part of your normal course of business. I think it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So there's certain parts where you need to create the building blocks to allow people to innovate, and that piece of sort of architecting just that building block piece can be done off to the side. Now, we did this at our shop where we were creating a new platform to create like an app store for Goldman Sachs. So we created a bunch of different applications that would be available to our clients completely digitally or via APIs to use for, I don't know, you're optimizing portfolios or you're backtesting products or you're trying to figure out, you know, content or research or structuring a structured product. I mean, a range of different things. And we did this all in a, you know, we architected the platform in a vacuum.
Yep.
And that was done separately. But then we took it out and introduced it to everybody else on every single part of the ecosystem, saying, okay, here's the tools. Now build on this in a way that you each want to, but the building blocks are all there for you to build to in a much more efficient manner, right? So you have something that pulls your analytics the way you want to, something else that's your calculation agent, something else that's your data source. You have all the tools there, but you can do it in a much more efficient manner. And people, you know, can take to that and understand that they can add innovation as a layer on top of what's already been built as the infrastructure. So you kind of you can do it in both ways. There's no magic answer.
Wow.
I think also kind of in the developing markets, doing that's a bit harder because you have some cultural issues that kind of overplay with things.
Yep.
So it's easy to kind of say that in Singapore and Hong Kong where you have a more kind of advanced culture and approach to business. But take places like Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, you know, if you try to introduce a whole bunch of kind of corporate innovation and try to create these, like I say, these kind of specialized blocks, it's a little bit more difficult, and some people just don't get it. So it's a real kind of fine balance that managers have to basically make these decisions.
Yeah, in the finance world with the Open APIs program and open banking, do you think that will enable, say, smaller fintechs and startups to connect with the large organizations?
Well, I do. I think there's also another trend that we're seeing is that a couple years back, if you became an entrepreneur, you're like, oh, the bank's not going to ever take me back again.
Yep.
I'm just going to be too weird for them.
Yep.
In a way, right? And then they set up their innovation units. It was kind of separate. And we're seeing a trend where it's now a thing. Like if you're an entrepreneur, or you have a small exit, or you spin it off, or whatever, you can go back. And I think that cross-pollination is just now starting to happen in Asia, in the mature markets, to your point. So we're seeing that in the mature markets. So I think that will help a lot. I mean, last year was the first time actually somebody who came out of hardcore entrepreneurship. And I mean hardcore, not like, oh, I quit for 6 months to see if I could start up, and then I came back. But I mean like hardcore and came back. So I think that cultural back and forth is going to help a lot. And then the API thing, to your point, will be more of a formalized plugin where you'll be everybody has skin in the game. You're working together on some projects, which are a more immediate business application than sometimes the accelerators, which, to your point, can sometimes be kind of out there separate.
FinTech, it's just a little bit, because it's so regulated, right? Because you're talking about finance and insurance sector. So I think having the understanding, even if the APIs open up for the startup to come in, I think what I see, it's a both side balance, right? For the traditional old companies to be able to be more open to understand how that can help. And if you really want to become truly, I mean, I work with a lot of big insurance and finance company, and I can see that huge mental block that they couldn't overcome. They have the money to invest and open up, but they don't know how to do it, right? And of course, there's all this fear by what do we do? And so there's this thing about them relaxing, and then I think for startup and accelerator programs, these guys got to get real about the real business world. And sometimes what they lack is really thinking that, oh, my product, that's it, right? You need to really understand everything about ROI. You need to understand about business impact. It's not just having a great idea, but, you know, JVs will only invest if there's going to be impact, right? I mean, it's got to be a returns at the end of the day.
And what we're seeing with organizations is the life cycle of the organization is becoming shorter. So, you know, in the old days, you know, you'd have an institution around for 103 years and all that. Now it's becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. What companies are you seeing in Asia that you think have the robustness to have a longevity, say, for the next 10, 15 years?
So in Thailand, one of the organizations there is CP, so the CP Group.
Yep.
Largely a agricultural-based
Yep.
and retail-based company. They own all the 7-Elevens and a vast majority of the agricultural stuff. They're really kind of diversifying and creating some innovation centers, kind of startup accelerators, and also investing into the local ecosystems. So they basically see kind of opportunities where technology can solve some of their issues, and they're working with local Thai companies and local startups to innovate and do some better work. So that's one of kind of the better local examples I can think of in that region.
Yep.
So in Chinese, right, we have this saying called 吃乐住乐娱. So basically, I think everything centered around food, living, wearables, entertainment, it's going to go far, right? And for me, looking at the evolution of how Asia has evolved, I think the big play in the next 10 years is the Asians are extremely hardworking people. You know, business is very important. I see the big play in relaxation and leisure, right? So I think whether creating, you know, I'm a big football fan. I don't play games, but, you know, I think sports is going to be huge. Whether it's going to be going into virtual reality, where I love to be able to watch, you know, the Premier League just at home in the virtual reality and not going to Stamford Bridge for my Chelsea team. But and I think game is going to be huge, right, in my mind for Asia, because I think the Asians is going to start to play more and work a little bit lesser.
I'm going to give you a hard time about that, though, because I think that's like one of those consumer trends. But in terms of your question of like what's really sustainable, I have a little bit more of a cynical
You don't
answer.
think sport
Whoever,
is sustainable?
yeah. Not that sports is a fad.
Maybe not Chelsea. But
But I think it's the guy who owns all the data cross-vertical. Full stop, done. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's like I think that's
So
one of the...
who's your company?
I'd have to end up back in China right now.
I think
Gojek,
Gojek,
right?
yeah.
Gojek comes to mind if we're going to stay in Southeast Asia.
Yep.
And put a pin in China for a moment.
Yep.
And, you know, to your point, if they manage to ride the wave into leisure, et cetera, that's an example.
Yep.
But
I think it's not here yet, right? If you ask me, the company that's going to be defining the future, I don't think it's here yet. It's not the Alibaba and Tencent. This is me, right, thinking.
I would agree with
Because,
that.
You know, I've worked with the likes of Nokia and all of those things gone, right? Nokia's gone. I
And
mean,
Kodak
so-
has come back into it.
Well, I'm not sure. I work with Kodak as well. But the point is, I think the company that's going to define the future is not born yet.
I mean, I think the time frame you were using was slightly different, right? So if you look at the top 10 market cap companies or value companies in the US, or, you know, as part of the Dow or the S&P, over the last 3, 4, 5 decades, it's changed dramatically, right? So, and all the stuff that's there now is, you know, Alphabet and Facebook and Amazon and others. So, to me, it's, if you're looking at a 10, 15-year time frame, well, those companies have been born. If you're looking at a 50-year time frame, that may be slightly different. To me, it's the data play, and it's China. And so, I mean, I'm going to pick Ping An.
Excellent. Well, I think time's up. I'd like to thank the panel. They've been very good. Better than good, really. But thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.